to require cabin managers to check with the pilot first? What's the process if you feel that you need to stand down, if a cabin manager feels they need to stand down someone?
I'm not, I don't work as a cabin manager, but my understanding of the process is that if they deem a cabin crew member unfit or not up to speed on anything that they deem, well, I mean, standards of operation and emergency procedures, they will then bring their concerns to the captain. But at the end of the day, it is pretty much the cabin manager's decision.
Can I ask a pretty dumb question? How do you, if you're qualified to be in the job, how is it that you're not up to speed? You shouldn't have the job, should you?
I think, well, if I may elaborate on what I meant by not up to speed, I meant when you can't answer a question with regards to a cabin crew drill as speedily as you would be required to. Sometimes cabin crew, you know, in the morning, at 5 o'clock in the morning when they're signing on, aren't as alert as a cabin crew member that would be signing on as 1 o'clock, compared to someone signing on at 1 o'clock in the daytime.
Is that right? It wouldn't work for me if that was the case.
Can we just go to the issue of, in your submission, you said that whatever type of contract of employment, we all share a common concern, fatigue. That's the third page of your submission. Can you just outline what concerns you have and your colleagues have in relation to this? But before you do that, I know that you are here in a private capacity, but you have been for a workplace delegate for the Flight Attendants Association of Australia for 4 years, and most recently as a Jetstar team coordinator. What does it involve being a Jetstar team coordinator?
It's exactly the same as being a workplace delegate, except I coordinate the team of union delegates.
And does that mean that you're the first port of call for many Jetstar flight attendants if they've got a concern or a complaint?
That is correct.
And how many Jetstar flight attendants come under your umbrella as a delegate?
The ones that are under my contract, the same contract of employment as myself, which are we're known as EBA crew.
And how many would that be?
I wouldn't have the number off.
It's in the hundreds?
That's correct.
Could I just raise a point of order, procedural matter? Are you okay if the media cameras are here?
Sure.
If you don't want them here, we can...
That's okay.
Okay, is the committee happy? Okay.
Can you just outline, I mean, you're here to give evidence to the Senate inquiry. Have you raised these concerns and have your colleagues raised these concerns to Jetstar management?
I personally have raised these concerns to my direct level of managers before, and my professional peers have also.
And what's the response been?
Myself personally was to manage my fatigue a little bit better, to take lots of vitamins and drink lots of water. My professional peers have pretty much received the same responses. So
you're saying that you didn't get a satisfactory resolution to the fatigue issues?
Not in my personal opinion, no.
Can you outline some of the concerns, and presumably we've heard evidence earlier today about backup clock operations. Can you just explain what your understanding is of that and what you've observed both in terms of yourself and your peers in relation to fatigue issues?
A back of the clock, well, I operate out of Sydney, so back of the clock flying is, we have two of them. It's a Sydney-Perth return or a Sydney-Darwin return. In winter they're rostered to start at 10 past 8 p.m. and you fly right through till, excuse me, 6:30 the next morning. And that's called back of the clock flying. We're concerned about it because it's very, very hard and trying on the body. It's at that time of night where no matter what you're taking or using as sustenance to try and stay awake, whether it be Red Bull, you just can't stay awake. You fight your eyes from falling asleep. You become very, very lethargic. I've noticed myself that when I hit around about 5 a.m, I am very, very slow in reaction. I feel quite disorientated. I feel quite agitated. I fight falling asleep. I feel restless. And then upon completion of the duty, my driving home is what I deem to be really dangerous. I've been pulled over twice by policemen who suspected me of being under the influence because they explained to me that the rear end of my car looked like a fishtail. So they questioned me, you know, had I been drinking, what I'd been doing, was I under the influence of any prescription or recreational drugs, to which I answered no. And it's upon explanation of what I'd just done, which is where they've told me, please, next time, you know, organise some transport, maybe home. And that driving in those circumstances that I was feeling is actually quite dangerous to the travelling public.
But airlines have to operate, they do back of the clock operations because they have to do the overnight flights, particularly on that Sydney-Perth, Sydney leg and Sydney-Darwin, Sydney and from the east to the west coast. Is it the question that you don't have enough of a break in between the flights, or what's the position there?
I personally don't feel we have appropriate rest areas or adequate rest. We are allowed
on the aircraft?
On the aircraft, that's correct. We are allowed to rest our eyes, which means we have to sit upright and rest our eyes. We're not allowed to fall asleep. And our rest area is allocated to us outside one of the lavatories on board the aircraft, usually in row 30. If passenger loads allow, we might be lucky and have row 29 and 30, and that's a bonus for flight attendants if we can get that. We try and make do with what we can to make it as comfortable rest area as we can for ourselves that are operating on the back of the clock, which sometimes means pulling the curtain right across the overhead lockers to block the light out whilst we try and rest our eyes.
Are you aware of any instances where some of your colleagues have had accidents, you referred to in your submission, after they're driving home from work? What's your understanding of that?
I had two personal friends of mine. One was a Brisbane flight attendant who was driving home after a back of the clock, who had a severe motor vehicle accident and was off work for roughly 8 months. And yeah, that was after a Brisbane back of the clock. There have been other accidents. One was after a run of shifts, and the back of the clock was the last one. And the other one was just after a massively long duty that was rostered to him during the day. All three personal close friends of mine, and two of those cars were written off completely. And the first lady that I was referring to had 8 months off work and has permanent back injuries to date.
But is there any form of transport supplied, or cabs or minibuses? What's put on for the crew?
If a flight attendant is to express concerns for their own wellbeing and safety and that they feel fatigued, they have the option of calling up crewing, which is our dispatch, you could call it, and express those concerns, and transport will be organised for you. And that consists of one-way travel. So you finish your duty at the airport in Sydney, for example, say it were me, I would request transport. I'd get a minibus that would bring me home, but that would mean that my car would be still parked at the long-term car park at work. So the next day I have to make my own way and travel back to work to pick up my car. So most of us don't take that option because some of us live in Wollongong. So to get transport one way and with 1 day off between our next rostered sort of shifts, and to make your own way back is just out of the question sometimes.
Could I just ask a question, Senator? One, in this back of the clock, you say you got off and you were probably not fit to drive the car. Are there some people who've worked the same shift of you get off and they feel like a game of squash? I mean, are there people who can deal with those hours better than others, to your knowledge? Is it a physiological thing?
Senator Heffernan, to be quite honest with you, I've never met one person that feels like a game of squash after a back of the clock.
Yeah, but if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I do. Or feel fit or feel great. Everyone expresses the same concerns that I do, and
So is there any order of, you know, one of these back-of-the-clock shifts, which is, say, Sydney, Darwin and back in one go, 10 hours or whatever it is there any guidance to you as a crew member that you should have 8 hours sleep in the previous 10 hours before you go on shift, you know, and that could be a bit of a pain if it's in the middle of the day, in the middle of summer sort of thing. But what's the requirement of the pre-work period? I mean, you might be out at the football, or you might be down to wherever, or you might be home in bed. That doesn't make any difference?
We personally would think that it should make a difference, but the company doesn't have any requirement, nor do they teach us how to rest before a certain type of duty. We are just, I mean, it's...
I don't know how you'd enforce it, but should they?
Should they? May I take that on notice for now, and I'll get back to you with an answer on that.
When you were trained, how many weeks training did you do before you became a flight attendant?
6 weeks.
And what's the level of training now?
I believe it is 15 days.
So it's half the period?
Correct.
Is there a difference between those flight attendants who've had the 6-week course and the 3-week course, in your opinion?
Yes, there is, because when I did the 6 weeks course, I was endorsed on one aircraft type, which was the Airbus A320. The crew that currently join Jetstar now are endorsed on both the Airbus A320 and A321.
But the period of training is less, isn't it?
That's correct.
Do you think it makes a difference if there's less training, or...?
Most definitely.
In what ways?
In terms of experience, in terms of safety, in terms of the crew actually feeling confident in what they're doing on board the aircraft, the impact it has to the fellow operating crew that have been there longer than the new joining ones.
How big an issue is fatigue the most common complaint amongst flight attendants? What is that the biggest safety concern?
The biggest safety concern to date, that, in my opinion, is fatigue, yes, and probably the training of the newer flight attendants and the impact that the training that they've had on the existing flight attendants.
Right. In relation to this issue of fatigue, is this an issue that you raised with your union, the FAAA?
Have I personally?
Or has it been raised with the FAAA, the issue of fatigue?
I'm unable to speak on behalf of the FAAA today.
Oh, no, I know you can't speak on behalf of the FAAA, but is this something that the FAAA would hear about on a regular basis from flight attendants?
I wouldn't say on a regular basis. Cabin crew are quite fearful of using the word fatigue, and they know that Jetstar uses or offers them, should I say, or maybe threatens is probably a better word, fatigue management, should they express concerns that they are fatigued.
And what does that mean in terms of fatigue management? What does that mean?
It's where you sit down with your direct manager or whomever they nominate, and you sit there and tell them why you feel fatigued, what you're experiencing, why you have reported yourself as being fatigued, and try and come to a resolution or solution as to how to fix it.
So if you complain about feeling fatigued, I thought you just take it, can your roster be changed, or you have to have a meeting with management first?
No, your roster can't be changed if you're fatigued, no. It can be changed personally. You would have to call in sick for work, but it would not be changed because you express concerns of being fatigued, no.
And have you had to have a sit-down meeting with them over fatigue management?
No.
Why is that?
Because when I feel fatigued, I take a sick day.
Right, so it comes off your sick leave?
Correct.
And what do your colleagues do?
Some have voiced their concerns, but have come out sort of on the end scale of things after voicing their concerns. So most of my colleagues just take a sick day when they deem themselves unfit to operate.
Right. And just going to the issue of the culture there, you have OSCAs, which are Operational Safety Company Advisory Reports, so they're filled out on a regular basis.
Correct.
Right. Have flight attendants actually gone to CASA about this, the regulator, in relation to these issues of fatigue? What's your understanding of that?
I personally know of circumstances where flight attendants have de-identified